Rusty Schmidt is with us. And for those of you that don't know, Rusty Schmidt is a North Porter. He lives right here. It's an incredible resource that we have for Rusty. So a little background as to Rusty and what he brings to this lecture is that Rusty's a landscape ecologist. He's employed with a firm called Nelson Pope Voris. It's located in Melville, so here on the island. He is also an adjunct professor with the horticultural department at Farmingdale State College and is the president of the Long Island Native Plant Initiative, or called LIMPI. So if you guys aren't aware of LIMPI, definitely go to their Facebook page and follow LIMPI. It is one of the main reasons why I got into natives. So I really appreciate everything they're doing there. Also, Rusty designs and constructs alternative methods of managing stormwater runoff, like we saw today with our storms, and has created hundreds of designs for habitat restoration, rain gardens, and sustainable landscaping ranging in size from small backyards to large multi-acre size campuses and parks throughout the nation. And Rusty, because he has so much free time on his hands, is a co-author of 3 different books. So 2 books that are on plant selection for stormwater management, again, really relevant for today's storms, and also the Homeowner Guide to Rain Gardens. So Rusty knows a wealth about native plants, how to manage them, and what would be great for our area. So with that, Rusty, I want to pass it over to you and share some of the great information you have for us.
Very good, thank you. I'm assuming everyone can hear me. So the next, and one more thing, is that this is a Minnesota accent. I can't make it go away. It is what it is. If you don't understand a word, I'm sorry. But what you're gonna do is have to listen for the long O, not the long A. So for me, it's I go out and about. It is a lawn, not a lawn. So we'll figure it out. You'll just have to follow along a little bit, and I'm sorry, but I can't make that disappear. So
that's all right, Rusty. We're pretty savvy with accents here, so don't worry about it.
So I'm going to share my screen. I think I had it. There it is. And I'm going to assume that everyone can see that.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Okay, so we're just going to talk about native plants and how they work, and especially here in the North Shore. And one of the things that I wanted, what I want to pass on is kind of think about all of those plants as we go. And I'm going to tell you, I don't have a favorite plant. I have a favorite ecosystem or a favorite reasoning of doing things. And so I don't really tend to. I have a favorite plant for a different situation, and so even for my background that I have on my Zoom call, that is actually a meadow that I created at the Sisters of St. Joseph in Brentwood. So this is kind of who I am, I guess. Okay, so here we go. So why natives? Most people think the reason why I choose natives is because of the birds and the butterflies, and absolutely that's true. That is very important, and I'm going to hit that quite a bit today, but there's a whole bunch of other reasons that I want to explain why native plants, one of which is that we really love the plants that are found from here. So if you look at Long Island as a whole, we really have 2 different regions of types of plants that we would find on Long Island. The South Shore and the East End is really the pitch pine oak forests. The North Shore, where we are, and this area is really more, especially along the coastline, is really dominant by tree species of tulips, black and red oak, beech, black birch, red maples, with understories of things like dogwoods. Sweet gum and pin oaks are found in the moist areas or near the kettle ponds. And then, and really there's a bunch of really cool regional coastal woodlands that are along this North Shore that would be normal. Of the entire length of Long Island, these yellow areas are kind of what's remaining that have been, for the most part, left alone. And you can tell, if you look closely, that most of these yellow areas are also associated with parks. So Comset State Park up here, for instance, the park for, yep, it's on the tip, just up the
Sunken Meadow?
road. Yeah, Sunken Meadow. Thank you very much. I was losing it there for a second. And so you can see some of these, the parks that are nearby. And then there's this little yellow dot right here. That is actually Hempstead Plains. The Hempstead Plains used to be 50 square miles. It was this entire area. And there's only 13 acres left. And that's right at the Hempstead Plains. So the Hempstead Plains is the furthest eastern prairie in the United States. But the other reason why I look at these native plants is, one is when they're found here, they can handle our cold winters, our hot summers, our wet springs and falls, and are suited for the soils and the temperature swings that we have here. But the other reason what I really like about native plants is their root systems. Turf grass have roots that are just a couple inches deep maximum, where most of our native plants, and especially our meadow plants and our forest plants, have roots that go multiple feet deep. And so this is a river oat that I broke at a foot. This plant actually has roots that go down about 3-4 feet. And some of these, especially those prairie plants, those meadow plants that we are going to talk about, they're also our most beautiful flowering plants. They have roots that can go even deeper than that. So for instance, purple coneflower, a non-native plant to New York, but everyone thinks it's native and it's pretty cool. Most people know what that is. They have roots that go down about 6 feet. And so that they have that opportunity to find new water, new nutrients, and have the ability to withstand our droughts and produce wider abundance underneath the soil than they do above the soil. And or a couple of our natives, big blue stem grass or little blue stem grass has roots that go down about 7 to 8 feet. And then there's one of my favorites is this one on the far left here. This is lead plant, Amorpha canescens. It's native to New York. It's also native to the Midwest. It has purple flowers, has silvery leaves, and has roots that go down 15 feet. In fact, I'm going to show it off a little later when we talk about the High Line in New York City. It's if you go to New York City to the High Line in June, this plant is in full bloom, and it's absolutely stunning. If you don't quite believe me with this graphic, my daughter came to visit, and we took the train down to Washington, D.C. on a spring break and visited the National Botanical Gardens, and they had a display about roots that day, and of course I took a picture. And so these are all native plants that are found throughout the United States. Many of them you can find right here in Long Island, and they excavated the plants. So this is about 8 feet from here to here, and you can see most of the plants are tied up, and so that they go very, very deep. Why this is important is all of our plants, whether they're the plant that's the herb that's in your kitchen window, or your violet that's in the house, or your tomatoes in the garden, or your plants out in the yard, all plants slough off a third of their roots annually. And they let those roots decay and decompose, and they put down new roots looking for new nutrients and new water. So then those roots go as far as they are allowed due to bedrock or soil conditions. And the old root, when it decomposes, leaves a hole in the soil, and it's kind of like a macropore or a root channel. And when water finds these holes, the water soaks in the ground. And so even in sandy conditions, if they're compacted sand, water doesn't soak in very quickly. However, when you have deep-rooted plants, you find that the water soaks in really, really fast. And some of the fastest ways to soak water in is to have these deep-rooted plants where the water can soak in 3, 4, 5, 15 feet. into the soil. And as it's passing through that soil, all those things that are associated with healthy soils, mycorrhizas, bacteria, fungi, are actually pulling all those chemicals and nutrients out of the water. And so that the water within a couple feet underneath the soil has become drinkably clean, getting back into our groundwater. So one of the best things that we can do here on Long Island as we drink the groundwater here on Long Island is to clean that water that's going to our groundwater. And one of the best ways to do that, easiest way, and we all can do it, is to have that water pass through healthy soils with deep roots. So I have a question for the audience, and I'm actually willing for everyone to jump on this one. What is the biggest crop in the United States by acreage?
Acreage.
Potatoes.
No.
Corn.
No.
Soybean.
No.
Grass.
Yeah, there it is. Lawn grass. There is more acreage of lawn grass than all of those other crops combined. Corn, potatoes, wheat, sorghum, cherries, blueberries, wine grapes out east. You add up all the acreage of all those crops, they do not equal the same amount of acreage as lawn across the United States. There's more acres of lawn than anything else. Now, here's the issue with lawn grass. Lawn grass is an alien plant. It's not from here in the United States, most of it. It is a crop because we water it, we fertilize it, we take care of it. But what does it give to us? It actually gives us very, very little. You have a place to have a picnic, a place to play lacrosse or soccer or football or baseball, but it really doesn't have any other use. The only thing that eats grass is geese. And we don't really love the geese on Long Island here around our yard. And so there's no real benefit to lawn grass. And so, in fact, we've converted 62,500 square miles, about 40 million acres, to suburban lawns in the United States, which is about 8 times the size of New Jersey. And we convert about 2 million acres annually, about the size of Yellowstone National Park, across the United States. And so when we start making these conversions, we are taking away, you're kind of creating a desert. There's not much that eats it, there's not much that lives on it, and it really becomes kind of a barren space. So what can we do in the United States to change that? And so we really need to start diversifying what we have in our own yards. Most Long Island yards have about 5% or less native plants on the property. And typically that's a tree or two that were left behind when the house was built. That a couple of oak trees or a pine tree or something like that, which is great. But most of the yards have been modified to become less and less healthy. So if we look at properties across Long Island, and this could be Levittown, it's not, but it could be, and you look at this area of all these homes and these yards that are connected end to end, where are these opportunities to start putting in that biodiversity? So watch the picture change. Those are all the places that we can start putting in that biodiversity throughout our landscapes. And so by doing that, by trying to convert to 60–70% of the landscape into natives, we're going to have a huge impact on the habitat and ecology that's all the way around us. So the main reason is insects. Insects are the most important group of animals and across Long Island. And the main reason is they're the source that transfers energy from plants into other animals. So so for instance, chickens, their favorite food of all time are wood ticks and deer ticks and all the other ticks. That's their favorite food. You have chickens, you don't have ticks. But what's the opportunity for these insects to grow is that they are the important piece of taking that energy that the plants are creating and then transferring it into their bodies, which then is then utilized by something else. And our birds, especially our terrestrial birds, rear their young on insects. They don't feed their young berries and seeds. They feed their babies insects, and especially caterpillars. And they eat about a caterpillar every 3 minutes to their brood of birds. And in fact, one brood of birds usually eats about 6,000 caterpillars per brood. And some birds, like that chickadee in the bottom right, raise 2 broods in a year. So that's really important to have these insects available. Next piece to that, to add to that, is 90% of our insects that eat plants, they require a specific native plant. So sometime in their development. So 90% of our insects require a plant, some specific plant to grow on. Most people know about the monarch caterpillar and milkweed. So that's called a host plant. That milkweed is the host plant for the monarch caterpillar. If you don't have the milkweed, you can't have monarchs. And what the monarch does is it eats the sap, the leaves and the stems, and primarily the sap out of the milkweed, which is poisonous to everyone, or to many, except for the monarch caterpillar. And what the monarch is doing is, by collecting that sap, they actually make themselves poisonous. They turn bright orange. They tell the world, "Don't eat me. I'm a poisonous insect. Please don't eat me." And it works. Here's the black swallowtail. Black swallowtails love parsley and cilantro. People plant that for this plant, but to tell you the truth, the better plant is the native plant, golden alexanders. The golden alexanders are the host plant to this black swallowtail. And if you're not poisonous or you're not big, you need to hide. So this caterpillar in the bottom left is the liatris moth, and the liatris caterpillar that is hanging out on the liatris plant.
What is that?
It's how to grow plants so that you like to help like.
And the other one here is an arborvitae butterfly. The arborvitae caterpillar is right here. That looks very much like the arborvitae plant that it's on. And this one right here is the moth for the laurel. This is a laurel leaf with a laurel butterfly on it. The white stripe down the middle is its back. You can barely see it, and the reason why it is here is that it hides very, very well. If you're not going to hide and you're not going to be poisonous, the other thing you need to be, the other way to survive is to have hundreds of thousands of you. So one way of doing that is being like the inchworm. The inchworm is found, so oak trees specifically, I'm going to go back a second. Back. Oh, previous, there it is. The oak tree is one of the host plants for the inchworms. And you know that at certain times of the spring, there's a ton of inchworms falling from the trees on their little silk. Well, there's thousands of them, and it's because they don't hide very well, and they're not poisonous, and they get eaten a lot by the birds. And so they just need to have a small percentage make it past the birds to get through that time period. So every time we plant an alien plant, we actually reduce the local insect population. The reason for that is that over millennia, our insects have developed a symbiotic relationship with their plants that are the host for them. And so they have this great reason to be together. And so when we start planting plants that are not from here, there's no insects that are associated with that plant. A good example of that is the crepe myrtle. It's become a very, very popular plant here on Long Island. About 10, 15 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to find it very well. It wasn't really a plant that was sold here, but thanks to climate change and a couple other, and a little bit of a breeding program, they are a plant that can be allowed here on Long Island. The problem with that, though, is that there are no insects that are associated with it. It does produce some nectar in the flowers, but it doesn't have other insects associated with the bark and the leaves and other parts of the plant. And so it really is minimal production to our insect. And so every time we plant an annealing plant, we're actually reducing the local insect population. And here on Long Island, the studies are showing that because we have about 35 times less caterpillars by biomass, and it has reduced our bird populations here on Long Island. Studies by Cornell, anywhere from 30 to 50% of our birds have less population because of that, depending on its ecosystem and what kind of bird. So if you're going to plant one native plant in your yard, my high recommendation is this oak tree. The oak tree has 534 different caterpillars that are hosted on that plant. Black cherry, 456, willows, 455. You can kind of see this list of the top producers of insect life by species. One of my favorites in here is the blueberries. They're very tasty to us, and they're really important for the wildlife. If not trees, perennials, the goldenrods, which the solidagos, are the highest producer with about 115 different species that are associated with it. Followed shortly behind that by asters and then sunflowers. There is a non-native on this list, the morning glories. The person that made this list, morning glories are native to that area, but not to this area. There's a couple good books for you to look at that will help you understand what I mean. Most of this information that I just told you about the birds and things are from a great book from Doug Talamay called Bringing Nature Home. He's got a new book out that takes it to the next level, but I would start with this book. Another good book, if you really want to understand host plants, is Pollinators of North America by Heather Holm. And a little news for you. I passed it on to the group, but Heather is going to work with us, and we're going to have some of her books available at the sales for the Northport Gardening Club at their shops, or the farmers market booth that they're going to have over the summer. So some of these host plants, the most common butterfly here on Long Island is the painted lady, and you would find the host plants of yarrow, pearl everlasting, the native thistle, and the mallows. The mallows are the native hibiscus. Buckeye butterflies, I think, is the most stunning butterfly here found on Long Island, with maybe the ugliest caterpillar. It's found on plantains, toadflaxes, the native snapdragons, and the false loosestrifes. And the others talked about their favorite plant. This is probably my favorite plant for Long Island that is underutilized. New Jersey tea. Ceanothus americanus is a small 2 to 3 foot tall shrub with these beautiful white flowers in June and July. Black tea berries late in the season. The berries and the leaves were used for tea back in the colonial days, and hence the name. It's the host plant to the small blue azure butterflies. Not just butterflies, the other important bit is bees. I know some people are a little scared of bees, but they're actually not really, they're not going to sting you. They 90% of the time when somebody gets stung, 99% of the time when somebody gets stung, they're stung by a wasp, not by a bee. And I want to just point out some of these amazing bees. And if it wasn't for bees, we wouldn't be able to eat. They're the main driver for pollinating our vegetable plants and our food sources. We have a couple bumblebees. This one's on Joe Pyeweed. This is on great blue lobelia, and this one's on sneezeweed. This one in the middle is marsh milkweed, and this is not a wasp. This is a bee. This is a bald-faced bee. Some of our bees come out of the ground. So this one on the right is a plaster bee, Coletus. It makes these little holes. They look like large ant hills, but you never see any ants around them. These are bee holes. I was out in Calverton on Monday, and there was a hole like this every 5 feet. There's a ton of bees coming out right now. The ground nesting bees, like the big bumblebees and these plaster bees, usually are ground nesters and are a little bit more solitary. There's also these cavity nesting bees, like the big monster one, the big moth bee that you see every once in a while. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. The mason bees, and a whole bunch of other cavity nesting bees. And then especially all of our sweat bees. Sweat bees are smaller than the end of your pinky. They're usually bright green, not yellow and black. They're not fuzzy. And they do a ton of pollinating on your small flowers that you have. And they reside in the stems of plants. So I'm gonna just talk about how to think about your gardens and show a bunch of pretty pictures. This one here is actually in Minnesota. This is a 1 block sized rain garden, but planted in a very wild and woolly look, cottage style or wild and woolly. Plants are planted randomly, and you can see that it has its own kind of beauty. Some people find this a weed mess, and some people find it absolutely stunning. It's totally up to you and your own personal taste. But I'm going to tell you, it doesn't have to be that, a certain way. But before we get into the style of gardens, I want to explain how to to create a garden. As I said, I was out in Calverton on Monday. We were killing the grass on a half-acre area to plant a pitch pine oak forest underneath this in this area. And what we used is cardboard. So I was lucky enough to be able to get rolls of cardboard. It's a lot easier to move. I can spread it out. Once it's rolled out, I tacked it down. These are 25 feet long, 3 feet wide. It was I had 28 rolls, and the 28 rolls, and you can kind of see them on the right here, were enough to cover this half-acre area. Then I put mulch on top of it and held it in place. I did that on Monday. Next week, I'm coming out here and planting 6,800 plants through the cardboard to get this back into a restored woodland site. But the reason why I'm telling you is that this is a great opportunity to smother plants, unwanted plants. So what I tend to do is cut it down as low as I can, or if it's lawn grass, don't worry about it. Put down cardboard and then put mulch on top. Wait a couple weeks and then plant right through it. If you're struggling trying to find cardboard, my high recommendation is to go to Costco. You don't have to be a member. You can just walk in, and between all of their pallets is a 3 foot by 4 foot flat, no ink piece of thin cardboard that they have. They recycle all of it. So when you can go in there, you can get hundreds of pieces at a time, put it in the back of your car. They will gladly give it to you, and then you spread it out and put mulch over the top. So you can get this for free. I want to show you how this could work. We are going to do a smothering method here. This is a school when my daughter was in the 3rd grade. My daughter's 26 now, so this is a long time ago. But what we did is we're going to make this, in this little patch right here, a native planting. It's also a rain garden, but we'll talk about that another time. So what we did is by smothering the grass, we just put in, we didn't bother with cardboard. I just used 4 inches of mulch and spread 4 inches of mulch over the grass and killed the grass that way by just smothering it. Cardboard is better, but it was tough enough with the kids. And so what happens whenever I work with students, it always rains. I have no idea why, and we can't move the date. So I gave them plastic bags. I don't know why the parents complained. So anyway, we got the mulch down and then we planted. And what I did is you can see that they had 6 packs of plants, same thing as that you get your pansies and petunias in. We gave them each student a trowel and then they brought out their little ruler, and I told them to grab a pack, take your trowel and shove it into the ground as hard as you can, wiggle it back and forth, make a hole, take the plant out, pull the roots apart. Don't be nice, plant it green side up. That's important to tell them. And then take your ruler, put it down a foot away and do it again. And each student planted 6 plants. All the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th graders planted. And then when it was done 1 year later, this is what it looked like. It was all these plants are things that you would find here on Long Island, except for this black-eyed Susan is not native to Long Island, but everything else here is native to Long Island. So we have a pale purple cornflower, we got black-eyed Susans, we got Agastaki or hyssop, which is licorice hyssop, Monarda, which is this lavender flower. We have marsh milkweed, we have ironweed, we have Joe Pye weed, we have Retivita yellow coneflower, and we have a tall sunflower. None of the plants were organized. I was never going to have an organized planting with the students, so I just gave them 6 packs and let them plant randomly, and this is what it looked like 1 year later. You don't have to plant with perennials. This is a dentist's office, their parking lot. The water came into this area, so we're going to again plant a rain garden, but what we also did is planted this with native plants. The maintenance man for the dentist's office knew how to take care of everything in the side, and outside he mowed the grass and he shoveled the snow, and that's all he ever did outside. And so when I said that the dentist would like to put in a garden, he said he didn't know the difference between a pansy and a petunia. So I said, do you know the difference between a shrub and a grass and a flower? And he said, yes. So I said, I'm going to plant this whole thing in shrubs, and if it's not a shrub, you kill it. And he said he can do that. So this is what it looked like 5 years later. This is red twig dogwood in the middle and fragrant low growth sumac around the outside edge. If I would do this today, I probably would put in another 3 different species of shrubs. I'd probably put in a little bit of that New Jersey tea. I'd probably put in some Darrellville Linicera, a dwarf bush honeysuckle. I would put in maybe a viburnum, maybe an evergreen like an inkberry or a bayberry. So I would probably add a little bit of different plants in here, maybe that beach plum that was mentioned earlier. So all those plants would work really well. That serviceberry or a hawthorn short tree or that sweet bay magnolia short tree, they would all work really well. So you can start adding a little diversity and still be shrubs and trees. This is a full sun opportunity. You can see the style of the house, but this little front garden is all natives. For this area, again, most of the plants here are going to be native here. This is little blue stem. This is Joe Pye weed. There's some ironweed. There's some Monarda, bee balm, and then there's a couple plants here that I would let you use, but they're not really native, which is the black-eyed Susans and the purple coneflowers. What I did notice is that when you work with putting in all natives, so this gentleman his grandkids came to play in his backyard every day, so we left this big open space for them to play soccer. Once they got old enough and they didn't really come back anymore, we planted the rest of the yard in natives, but you can see that this is all natives up this bank. What I did notice when folks start planting these native plants, because you don't have to do any additives, meaning you're not adding water once they get established, you don't add fertilizer, You don't use pesticides. If you plant it kind of like what I do with that cottage look where all the plants are touching, what happens is you end up going out there to weed, you pull out one plant and you spend most of the rest of the time either with an adult beverage or a Diet Coke with a smile on your face. It just becomes less and less maintenance over time because you just don't have the opportunities for the invasive species to come in or the weeds. This is a garden all in shade. It doesn't have to be in sun. So in this one, I just came and took a picture at the very wrong time when very few flowers were blooming at the time. We only had one thing blooming in the middle, which looks like a mint, looks like a mountain mint. But we have a native sedge, we have sensitive fern, we have some native Michigan lilies that have that orange flower that goes upside down. So these are amazing ones coming up. We have some Culver's root coming that will have white flowers. We have some blue lobelia coming that will have blue flowers. We have some cardinal flower that has red flowers. There's going to be a ton of flowers in here, and there's a 2-week period where there's no flowers, and that's the week that I went out there. And so, but you can see that it still looks interesting even when there's not a lot of flowering going on. This is their front yard all in sun. This is 3rd year after planting, and you can see that there's some coreopsis here, some asters, little blue stems. The liatris is done blooming, the black, blazing stars, and then there's a short red twig dogwood, which is a cultivar to kind of hold a place for it. This one is in Kansas City, but you can see that this is mostly shrubs with a few flowers, and they look amazing at different times of the year. This is a fall planting, or fall in the fall visit. And so you can see a few white flowers still going, but you can see mostly a lot of beautiful reds and burgundies and maroons of fall leaves coming. You already know where this is. This is at a Target. You already read the name. The reason why you read the name is just because it's native plants doesn't mean you can't put it into a design. All the plants point at the sign. So Target wanted to put in rain gardens to collect the water from the parking lot. But when they said we wanted to plant these trees and flowers and things, they were really worried about hiding their sign and nobody would see the sign. So what I did is said, well, what if we pointed at the sign instead and convinced them to do this design? So all these plants are lined up to point at the Target sign so that when you're standing in this point, you're pointing at the Target sign and getting people to read the sign with subconsciously before you even get there. Because what you do is you look at the garden and you automatically go up and then read the sign. As a landscape architect, we do a little bit of psychological manipulation as well. And how would you like to sit at this car wash? Instead of sitting, waiting for your car to come out, why not sit near a pollinator planting with a ton of flowers and a buzz? So my person that I learned to design with native plants was a gentleman named Pate Odolf. Pate is from Denmark, Holland, he came to the United States and learned in the Midwest some of his structures and designs, and I was lucky enough to be trained by him, and he was my mentor for a while. And so he really looks at mixing grasses, forbs, which are flowers, and shrubs. He puts mostly in natives with a few cultivars, and he plants in big masses or drifts. So what I mean by big masses or drifts is this garden has just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different kinds of plants in them, but in large quantities, 25 to 45. By doing that, what happens is those plants have a bigger splash. Or in this case, there's again not very many plants in this lower right-hand corner, but it's repeated. The plants are repeated so that you get a splash of color in pockets and that they repeat throughout the garden. So for instance, this is the High Line. This is the design by Pate Oldoff. I was lucky enough to get his design, and this is the design on the High Line for one of the sections. And you can see there's not a ton of plants here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20 different species in this section, and this is probably a 1 block long section of plants that are repeated over and over again. So if you look at it this way, this is what it looks like in real life. Or so this is some of his other projects in the Midwest. This is my favorite. It's kind of a Monet, I'd say. You would probably appreciate that in your own yard. But this is the High Line, and in New York City. And you can see that he plants in pockets of plants, drifts, and how they he repeats that pattern. So as you're walking, you see different pieces along the High Line. Here's that plant I talked about a long time ago. This is that ironweed, lead plant. This is lead plant, purple flowers blooming in June with that silvery leaf. It's only, as you can see, about hip high, and amazing flowering plant. Here's some grasses with that pop of Asclepias tuberosa, which is butterfly milkweed. So one of the other things that I like to design with are cues of care. So when you plant with the native plants and you even keep it a little more random, instead of going Pate Oldoff style, but put a little randomness to it, you still need to prove that it's a garden and not a weed patch. In this day and age, if it doesn't seem to be manicured, it doesn't seem to be accepted as a garden. So you just have to prove that cue of care. So in this case, it's this walkway. In this case, it's the wall and the rock. And so what we want to do is put in maybe making that garden look deliberate with a boulder wall in these cases, or some edging. Or maybe a little more, if it's a little bit Pate Oldoff like swaths, but putting in that split rail fence tells the neighbors that this is a garden and not a weed patch. Or putting in that arbor, or the bird bath, or the pink flamingo if you really want a pink flamingo, or the gnome. All those things are fine. It gives the observer a hint that this is done on purpose and not a weed patch. One of my favorites is putting in a bird bath or a bench. And so in this case, this was just after planting. You can see there's a walkway across it so that you're in it as well as around it, and a little bird bath. This came in, and in fact, you've already seen this picture 2 years later when I talked about when I visited that garden that wasn't blooming very much at the time. This is that full shade garden that I talked about earlier. This is at a village hall. You can see that this is a pretty wild looking garden, a little more cottage garden, and a little bit random. But as soon as you put in that split rail fence, you don't even have to put it all the way around, just in a couple spots. It tells the visitor that this is a garden and done on purpose. This is a school, similar thing. The students planted it, so again, it's a little bit random, but we have a bridge across it to visit through the middle, and then a little rope fence that goes around it. This is the native black-eyed Susan for Long Island. This is Rudbeckia lanceolata, sweet brown-eyed Susan. This is a larger one near a lake in Minnesota, but you can see that split rail fence is all it took to delineate where the mower stops, but also providing this big open space showing that it is it's planted on purpose. There's actually no weeds in there. it's all native flowers and grasses. And another thought process that I like to utilize when I'm designing is to give and take away views. Don't you all just want to walk around that corner and see what's around that corner? It's inviting. And the reason why it's inviting is that there's you see these cool things going on around you and you're like, wow, what's around the corner? I bet there's a little something more around the corner. There's a few non-native plants like this hosta, this peony, and these marigolds, but all the other plants for the most part are native to this area that this plant picture was taken from. And you see that I didn't remove all of the lawn grass. This little bit of lawn grass is enough to have a good walking path. It delineates the garden more, and again, back to it's inviting you to go around the corner. Screening, starting to use evergreens and other reasons for it. So this one is using the native pines. You can see that, and this is here on Long Island, the native pines, they start to lose their branches lower. So let's put in this case, some laurels underneath to fill in that space. And you can start putting in layers, and you can see that you have a layer of evergreens, another layer of evergreens, and then the woodlands around the outside edge. And you can kind of see that there's this breakdown of plants going up the slope.
Hey, Rusty, you told us to interrupt you when we.
Yeah, perfect. I'm just going to show 2 pictures and then I'm going to stop. So, and the reason why I want to show this is what I've noticed with homeowners is once you start getting them interested in native plants, this gentleman that has this house put in this amazing garden here. And then once we did that, he decided to do the rest of his yard. So there's a little strip of lawn right by the street. And then there's this little patch of lawn right here where he sits his lawn chairs out to listen to the birds and watch the bees and watch neighbors go by. So, okay, so I'm going to stop, and I gladly will take questions. I'll leave this up because you never know, I might have something to talk about. And every once in a while, I'll click a picture.
It generates more questions.
That's
So
right.
if anybody has a question for Rusty at the moment, feel free to come off mute and throw your question out there, or if you want to put it in the chat, feel free to do that as well. If you come up with a question later and you can't think of anything at the moment, feel free to send us a message or an email at Northport Native Garden Initiative, and we're happy to get an answer for you.
Right, and I'll gladly answer emails in the future, so no problems.
I have a quick question. I have a lot of hosta. I didn't know it was non-native. So what's an option that's similar to hosta?
So are you, is your hostas in the shade? Is that why you have hostas?
Yeah,
okay.
it's full shade around because of the fence and stuff, yeah.
Okay, so, and you want to keep things short like hostas? Is that what you're hoping for?
Yeah, I'm going to do tall in the back and then the
Okay.
hostas in front.
So I love shade gardens the most because they're the most challenging and they give me a challenge, which is always fun. So in the back row, you might want to think of things like evergreens, like an inkberry or a mountain laurel in the background, or also in the back row, taller deciduous short shrubs would be things like high bush blueberries. There's a couple viburnums that are quite amazing. And my favorite viburnum here on Long Island is the maple leaf viburnum, Viburnum acerifolium. Then in front of that, you might want to put in some taller flowering plants, some things like woodland sunflower, Helianthus divaricatus, or the blue wood aster or the white wood aster are a couple late blooming ones.
I'm getting the 2 blue woods tomorrow. Good.
Oh,
good.
perfect. That's a good one. Another favorite of mine that's probably not at the nurseries yet, but will be in another month or so, is Solidago flexicalis, which is zigzag goldenrod. If your site is a little damp, one of the turtle heads would be amazing in that space. If for shorter things up front, you might want to look at low bush blueberry or huckleberry, two of my favorites that would be found here in the woods here on the North Shore. The other one that, let's see, what other shorter guys? Mayapple is a beautiful spring ephemeral. It'll bloom. Yep.
Yeah, but the Mayapple's poisonous. I have a dog and a grandson. Like, how poisonous is it?
So I have had it in all of my gardens for as long as I've been planting gardens, which is longer than I've had kids. And and I have 4 dogs. I've never worried about it. Right.
Okay.
And,
that's my biggest concern. Okay.
Right. And if they are interested in it, then you may want to move them.
Okay.
Yeah. And they would have to eat a lot before they're going to start getting sick. So if you see them eating at once, move the plants or fence them off. But I don't see that happening. Most critters realize that it's not good for them and stop right away. And kids, they grow up and you teach them, in my opinion. That doesn't mean that's how you have to do things. You might just want to move the plant. Yep, I have a couple names. Jacob's Ladder is another good spring ephemeral that's kind of shorter. Let's see, there's a ton. I just can't think of any of them off the top of my head.
No, that gave me a lot. That gave me a lot. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Rusty, we have some questions in the chat too. So
Sure.
Suzanne's asking, what kind of low-growing sumac did you use by the dentist's office, I think it was?
Yeah, it's a fragrant low-grow sumac. So Rus arabitic, something like that. Arabitic, something like that.
Okay.
RHUS is the genus name, Rus.
Right. She actually wrote that, so she already knows. But and then we had Janet said she has a space under a pine barrier. What's a group of plants that can tolerate mostly all shade, all short plants? That's probably what you were just saying, right?
I was just saying, I have the exact same thing in my front yard. I would start with those low bush blueberries and huckleberries for some structure. And then there's just a ton of pretty much that same list that I was just mentioning that would work really, really well there.
Oh, and I'm interested to hear your answer to this too. Susan says, are weeds non-native, and what defines a weed?
A weed is an undesirable plant. So if you don't like hostas, that's a weed to you. If you don't, it might be everyone else's favorite. This doesn't mean it's just a weed is a false name. It's just whatever you don't like is considered a weed. Personally, your most weedy plants are probably my favorite plants. So, it's just, it's a matter of choice. Where the difference is an alien plant is a plant that's not from here. And then an alien plant that's not from here that is too aggressive and is taking over and pushing out our native plants, that's an invasive plant. And by the way, I would like you all to do a little homework. There's a website called LIISMA.org, or Long Island Invasive Species Management Area.org. So LISMA, LIISMA. On that, there's a tab called Meet the Plants. And on the bottom of that tab is a thing called Tier Ranked List. And on that tier ranked list is all the invasive species found here in Long Island. And there are some plants on there that are going to surprise you. So for instance, newly on that list that we are very much pushing to get on a no-sell list is Forsythia, or Buddleia, the butterfly bush. Buddleia, butterfly bush, we are finding more and more in the woods, pushing out some of our native plants. Forsythia, look at how much yellow is out there right now. It seems to be in everyone's yard except for mine. My wife doesn't like me sometimes because it's one of her favorite plants and I won't let her plant it. But you can also see that you find it in places that you know nobody planted it. It is finding its way. English ivy is on that list. Pachysandra is on that list. There's a whole bunch of plants that you will find in just about everyone's yard that are on that list. Norway maples, that Japanese maple, that purple-leafed short tree maple, it's on the list. So those are plants, and an invasive species is something that is disrupting our habitat and costing humans money. It has to be both things. So when it usually costs people money is that it's causing disruption to the blueberry farms or the wineries or something that is having an effect on our income.
How about this? Where's purple coneflower from if it's not from?
It's found in all 50 states and everyone thinks it's native in their state. But the real native range is a small portion of Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin in central Minnesota. It's not even found in Minnesota, and we in Minnesota think it's native too. So now here, with that said, it's not invasive. It's not native to here, but it's not invasive, and it's not pushing anything out. Doesn't mean you can't have, I didn't say that you have to have 100% native plants in your yard. My wife is English. There's English plants in my yard that are not even from the United States in my yard that we have to have. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, so long as they're not invasive and pushing out other things. So purple coneflowers, nothing wrong with them. In fact, I kind of encourage them. If you love them, plant them. The goldfinches will eat the seeds right from the plants late in the season. The bees will be buzzing all the way around them, and they're a stunning plant when they're blooming. So there's nothing wrong with them. I just would like you to think about trying to get to, oh, I would love if you got to 50% of your yard being native. I would adore you if you get to 75%. So, you know, getting up higher is good. Doug Talamay's rule of thumb is 2/3 for the birds. If you can get to 66% of your yard, he thinks that if all the yards got to 2/3, we would probably have a chance to get some of our bird populations back.
Great. Recommendation for a native ground cover for a hilly yard.
Okay, sun or shade? So I'm gonna give you two. For the shade, if you want a ground cover that spreads and is grass-like, look at Carex pennsylvanica, which is Pennsylvania sedge. It only grows, I gotta get my hand in there. It only grows about 3 inches tall, 4 inches tall. You'll never mow it, and it covers the site. You can add in some kind of cool things that will spread and take over, like wild columbine, aquilegia, geranium, wild geraniums, ginger, wild ginger. All those things will spread with it. The May apples and all those things will spread with it and kind of make a variety of texture that will cover the ground. It could also be a vine, Virginia creeper. If it's full sun, a little different thought process. Strawberries make a great ground cover. They can handle some shade, but not full shade. Another favorite of mine is that phlox that's in blue and purple and whatever all over the place right now. That's a native plant, believe it or not. Phlox sublatica. It's the short one. It's the moss phlox. It's actually native to the United States, to New York, and to New England, and to the Long Island. So it is a great plant. What you're seeing out there is mostly cultivars of it, but that's okay. And it makes a great ground cover, and it's evergreen.
Okay. Prairie Nursery sells a no-mow lawn of native fescues. Is that something? What do you think of that? Is the question.
Yeah, I use it it's hard to establish here in Long Island. You'll notice if you look really close that it's zones 3 to 6, 7, which is what we are, is hard to establish. Once it's established, it works pretty well, but it's hard to get established. The low mow mix is not native. It is it's 7 different dwarf fescues. I do use it, and I do use it for a different reason, for being a sustainable yard, because it works great in sand, it works great in sun, and to part shade. So it works on most of our yards here in Long Island, and it will get only 3 inches tall, and you don't have to mow it except for twice in June when the seed heads come up. So for lack of mowing, having a good lawn grass that you can play on, it's a good alternative, though it's not native.
Okay. Do you need 2 service berries in order to get fruit?
Some people say so. I have seen otherwise. It just depends on how many pollinators you have. Whenever you do groups of 2 or 3 or 4, you're going to have more pollinators, more pollination, more berries. So I would recommend 2 or 3, but you usually can get away with 1. My parents always called them June berries, not service berries, different part of the country. And the reason for it is the red berries in June are the tastiest fruit you'll ever eat in your life, as long as you can get them before the birds eat them. So as soon as they start turning that a little darker red, and you start seeing birds come to the plant, if you want them, go out and shoo away the birds, collect as many as you can. It makes the best jam or jelly. You can put them right in your mouth, but the pit is kind of big, so you spit more out than you eat. So most people don't eat them raw. Most people put them in a jam or jelly or something like that.
Great.
Matt, I'm going to jump in. Rusty, I'm going to choose some names. So for the giveaway. So for anybody who doesn't know, if you jumped in late, we're actually going to be giving away 3 sets of native plants. So I'll choose 3 names. We purchased a number of plugs for various types of native plants. So I'll choose a couple names right now, and then those would be the winners for the evening.
Right, and we'll contact you and get the details on what you've won. To be honest, we don't know yet. We're just kind of getting our plugs together and seeing what we have.
Yeah, we bought a lot of them. All right, the first winner, Eric Sandin.
Woohoo!
Eric.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm so excited. Thank you. That's awesome. I can't wait until you figure out what plugs. That's awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks for the group. And thank you, Rusty. This was very, very informative, and I loved it. So thank you.
You're welcome. No problem.
Thanks for that gift.
All right, the next winner is Janet. I don't have the last name. Oh, there you go.
I got my tree lit up. I knew I was going to win something.
I was wondering that,
Don't
Janet,
judge.
looking back, I was like, she have a Christmas tree up? I love it.
Well, I took the ornaments off. It's just a spirit tree now.
I love it. Good
Oh,
for you.
that's great.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Rusty.
No problem.
All right, and then the last winner, Gillian Thrasher.
That's me.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you. Great. This is actually not my name. My name's really Vicky. This is my work Zoom.
Oh,
So I'm Vicky O'Brien.
oh, let me write that down. All right, Vicki.
Yeah, please write that down.
Okay, thank
Great.
you. So we'll
Yay.
contact all of you. Matt, go ahead.
All right, so we'll just continue the questions. So
Before you go to the question, I want to show something right here.
Mhm.
This is in East Meadow. The picture on the upper left was we removed, you can see it's a small yard. We removed all of the lawn grass in the front yard. We replaced it with native plants, and you can see it was planted early in the spring of 2019 and the fall of that same year. Look at how thick and lush that looks on the bottom. Little blue stem, coreopsis, asters, a whole bunch of kind of fun stuff. So you don't have to have a big space to do something amazing for the wildlife. And you can see in a very tight area like East Meadow how impactful it can be.
All right, so back to questions. So we have Teddy is in the middle of a full yard reno. Seems there's a lot of sand. Are there thoughts on how to understand the type of soil you have, and then which plants grow best in your soil, or do you need to add topsoil?
So you noticed when I talked about your soils before that I just smothered the plants and did not, and then added mulch. That cardboard and mulch will break down for organic material. What I have learned over the years is by adding in compost or adding in topsoil, you actually get more weeds, the things that you don't want, that grow more robustly than our native plants. Our native plants are used to the sand and soils that we have here on Long Island. I would highly recommend that you don't adjust the soils unless it is just pure sand, like the beach sand, then you might. But other than that, if it's sand that's come from the top of the hill, then it was native here, it's naturalized here, you're just going to choose plants that can be more drought tolerant. So those blueberries and huckleberries in the shade. One of my favorite plants here in Long Island, the prickly pear cactus. I think it's another underutilized plant, and it's very nutritious. It can make great food, makes great salsas, or there's a couple drinks you can make out of it. You can, the fruit is very, very tasty. Great tacos. You can actually take the paddle, take off the thorns, of course, take off the skin and put it on the grill and make a steak out of it. It's quite, it's one of my favorite underutilized plants here on Long Island, and can handle full sand. And by the way, if you want to find it here in Northport naturally, please don't pick it, don't steal from it, just go admire it. It's right on Crab Meadow Beach. So when you go to Crab Meadow Beach and you go to that little gazebo that's off to the right that nobody seems to go to, right before you get to it and after you go past it, it's on the right-hand side.
That's a good point too. As we learn more and more about native plants, we're going to start seeing them more. I just noticed since I've been learning, when I go on hikes, I see them everywhere, and it's a really important point to leave them where they are, right? They're growing where they are for a reason, and
So here, so one thing that I'm going to pass on, the Long Island Native Plant Initiative, which I'm the president of, has a terrible acronym of LIMPY. I can't change that. We go out and collect native seed from across Long Island. We have very strict rules. There have to be a minimum of 50 individual plants of that species in a spot. We only take a quarter of the seed. We take the other part of the seed and drop it into place and hopefully spread it a little bit. And the other half we leave for the animals. So then of the seed that we collect, half of it goes into the seed bank for genetic posterity. And then the other half we grow. We then go through a 2-year process. We grow the seed into plants plugs, and we plant it into what we call a founder's plot. That founder's plot is what's happened here in Long Island is that our native populations are becoming more and more isolated, further and further apart, and so that they're not genetically crossbreeding anymore. Because of homes and houses and farms and everything else that we do here in Long Island. And so what has happened is the plants that are in these populations, their genetics are decreasing. And so what we do is we take some of that seed from Montauk and a little bit from Fire Island and a little bit from Shoreham and a little bit from Nassau County and a little bit from here and there. And then we plant 7 different isolated populations together, 1,000 plants from 7 different locations together in the founder's plot. They cross-pollinate. The seed that we get from those plants actually have more genetic diversity than what we find in the wild. We take that seed and we grow that up, and that's what we sell. That is Long Island propagated and ecotype plants. And they're hard to find, and we are doing our best to first protect the plants and then increase the diversity that is found here on Long Island. So that's a little bit about us. You're muted, Matt. There you go.
Yeah, that's great. All right, man, there are a lot of questions, so I'm just gonna fire them off here. Suzanne has dug out a lot of butterfly bush and forsythia last year.
Very good.
Is spice bush a good replacement for forsythia?
Can't even say it. Spice bush is one of my favorites. Again, you'll notice that I have a lot of favorites. Spice bush, if you have somewhat damp soils, it is normally found in damp places, wetlands, things like that. So if you have a damp spot, that would be a great plant to plant in its stead. You will, if you get put a few of them together, you might start finding the spice bush black swallowtail, which is kind of a unique find here on Long Island that is only associated, its host plant is a spice bush. So that's pretty cool. If you don't have quite the damp spot, but you have non-sand soils, then I would plant it and just make sure you add a little water every once in a while and you'll be fine. Other plants that would work well, elderberry, white flowers, great fruit that you can eat late in the season, or you can take the flowers and make elderflower alcohol from it, which some people call Saint Germain. There's other ones would be, there's a couple good viburnums, viburnum dentatum and things like that. So those are a couple good ones. My, a short one, Daravilla lanicera, or dwarf bush honeysuckle. I think I posted it online in the group earlier this season. It's just starting to flower starting to leaf right now. It has beautiful yellow flowers in the middle of the summer with coppery gold or coppery green leaves throughout the season. And it's about 4 foot tall instead of really tall.
All right. Replacement for butterfly bush, flowering and good for a windbreak.
Okay, so we kind of hit a couple of those. Some other ones that I would recommend, let's see. So unfortunately, we don't have very many shrubs that bloom in the middle of the summer. I mentioned 2 of them already, dwarf bush honeysuckle and New Jersey tea. They bloom in the summer, but they're both short. They're 3 to 5 feet tall. Other plant, so you might want to do some of your perennials to add for bringing in butterflies. And I'm going to tell you, the blazing stars and the monardas, the bee balms, bring in more butterflies than any, and the asclepias, the milkweeds, bring in more butterflies than any butterfly bush I've ever seen. Or a thoroughwort, which is part of the Eupatorium family, part of the Joe Pye family. And they bring in more butterflies than anything else. So if that's what you're looking to do, and then instead for the screening, maybe a plant that I haven't mentioned yet, Aronia melanocarpa, or Aronia arbutusa, depending on how tall you want to get. The chokeberries, melanocarpa is black chokeberry, the arbutusa is red chokeberry. Black chokeberry is about 5 foot tall, 6 foot tall, stays kind of compact in a circle. The arbutusa, the red chokeberry, gets 8 to 10 feet tall, and they have white flowers that will bloom soon in May. And they put out either black or red berries late in the fall that the squirrels, the birds will eat, or you collect and make a great jam or jelly out of them. Again, it's another very edible plant. You'll notice there's a theme for some of my plants that, hey, use them. They were here first, and please utilize them. Another great one is Anise hyssop, Agastache funicula. The leaves make a great tea. And it brings in more butterflies and bees than any butterfly bush.
I can tell you from experience, choke cherry is properly named. If you don't make jam out of it and you just eat it off of the bush,
Chokeberry, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
How about clethra for a butterfly bush replacement?
Yes, totally forgot about that. Yes, thank you very much. Clethra, in that shady, sunny to shady spot on the slightly drier side to damp side is clethra or sweet spire. On the wet side, if you have a wet spot, button bush, Ceanothus. That one is amazing. Oh no, cephala. I'll get it wrong. Buttonbush is an amazing midsummer flowering shrub.
Okay. Deckers is selling hybrid lupines and wild geraniums. How do you feel about hybrids?
I don't really care for the hybrids. I'd rather go for a cultivar. So here's what you are looking for. First, I try to go with truly native. So this is my choice here. I choose native number one. If I can have the native plant, I will go with the native plant first. There are a couple native plants, excuse me, that I will only go with a cultivar. So for instance, one of my favorite grasses is switchgrass. It's very fine, you can see through it. It's a very beautiful ornamental shrub. It flows really nicely in the wind. It stands up in the winter, and it's about hip high to or slightly taller. However, the native one spreads via rhizome, by roots. So that's the one time I always use a cultivar. So you might want to use a cultivar. So then my second choice is a cultivar of the native. And how you can tell is if the scientific name is the same. So I'm going to use purple coneflower, because I bet you all know purple coneflower's scientific name is Echinacea purpurea. So Echinacea purpurea is the native. Echinacea purpurea with a quotation with another name, like quotation white swan quotation, that is a cultivar of Echinacea purpurea. If you see an X in the name, that's a hybrid. So I go to hybrids third and alien plants fourth. So that's how I choose my plants. So lupin, I would ask you all to see if you can find the native lupins. I know that Deckers aren't selling them yet, but I'm hoping that they will. I know others will over the summer, which is Lupinus perennius, and that one is really it is the host plant to a couple of endangered butterflies here on Long Island. So I'd rather that you use the native over the cultivar, and the cultivar instead of the hybrids. And the same with geranium, by the way. Doesn't matter. Geranium maculatum, the native is just as beautiful as any of the cultivars. But by the way, I have a cultivar geranium in my own front yard, though, so I do use them. Matt?
Okay. Have you grown mulberry plants, and do you like them?
There's only one native mulberry. I do like them, and again, they make good food. The mulberry berries make a great jam or jelly. So be careful. The other one is on the invasive species list, and I'm going to screw it up if I say which one's which. So I'm not going to say which one's which. Look online. There's a black mulberry and a red mulberry. One's native and one's invasive, and I always screw it up. So I'm not going to say which one's which.
Okay. Which serviceberry is the red one you were talking about?
Oh, so they're all red. There are 4 native serviceberries here on Long Island. The scientific name is Amelanchier, Amalnchier, Amelanchier. The one that's easiest to find is Laevis. It is the mid-sized one. It grows like a vase. It has white flowers, red berries, amazing fall color. Amelanchier canadensis is the one that you would find on Fire Island. It's a little short. It's the shortest of them all. It's probably the 10 to 12 footer, and it's a little more like a really big bush. And then there's grandiflora, and there's one more I can't remember, but grandiflora is the tallest and the most, well, it's got the name right in it. It has the most gorgeous flowers.
Okay.
And there's one more, but I can't remember. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm
Yep.
sorting through the comments here. Just for time, let's see. A good source of Lupinus perennius seeds.
No, I don't have. So unfortunately, to get the seed for lupin, you probably are gonna use Pinelands in New Jersey is probably gonna be your best source. Though New England wetland plants also sells it, I think. So those might be your two best sources. Or one more. No, they don't sell it. For getting the plants, not the seed, you might want to look at Archwild, ARCHEWILD, out of Pennsylvania.
So if anybody does go to Pinelands in Jersey, they sell them in flats. Small, not the lupin, we haven't tried that, but most of their things come in flats. So you're going to get, 50
50 plants for 60. Yeah, 50 plants
so
for $60.
it's a great deal. But you're like, what are you going to do with 50 lupin? So if somebody wants to do that, start a chat or start a thread in our Facebook page, and I'm sure we could get those sold or picked out really quickly.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And it might be something that might be a way to get the sale for next year. Order ahead of time and then buy the plants.
Great suggestion. We're already starting next year's list. We already have a whole bunch.
I apologize if I missed any. There was a lot of comments here, but it seems like we're towards the end here, but ground cover for grass between the road and the sidewalk.
Oh yeah, back to that. My favorite is that moss phlox. Makes a great ground cover. Or you could also go with Achillea yarrow. Yarrow, you don't have to have the flowers that get taller. You can just keep the it's like this great little fern cover that you can mow off and it doesn't hurt anything. My other favorite is strawberries. And then another one that I haven't mentioned yet is Juncus tenuis, which is pathrush. Pathrush is a native plant that it's in the name. You walk on it, doesn't hurt anything, and it works really well.
So that was my question. Are they all dog urine proof?
Nothing's quite dog urine proof, but most things will be the ones that I just mentioned are more likely to be urine resistant and fine. Just if you're going to do that, you might put the strawberries out there. You just might not want to eat the strawberries.
No, yeah, because everyone has dogs now, and the grass area is very popular.
If you ever come to my yard, I have a lot of strawberries in certain areas, and if you see the strawberries that have seeds only on one side of the fruit, don't eat that one. That's the one that my dog has been licking all the seeds off of.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right, that looks like unless anyone else wants to jump in with a.
I have one more comment that I'd like to pass on. If you're looking for some plants, we do, Limpy does have some plants for sale. You can go to info@limpy.org and you can ask for what we have available. We have a lot of purple lovegrass and mountain mints and some things that are in flats, or some of that aronias or things, clethra, in gallon pots. And quite a bit of prickly pear, for instance. So we'll be selling all the way through the summer on a as-come basis. Contact us ahead of time. However, our big plant sale will probably be this fall. And the last thing that I want to add is on Saturdays from 10 until 2, most Saturdays, we are at our greenhouse, and we will, if you want to volunteer, come out. We will teach you how to transplant, how to collect seed, how to clean seed, how to grow plants, how to whatever we do something different every week. And we try to make it interesting and fun, as well as, get a little free labor out of the deal. So.
Rusty, can you give the exact location of Limpy?
Yeah, so the Limpy greenhouses are at the St. Joseph property in Brentwood, which is 1725 Brentwood Road, or 1725 Brentwood Road in Brentwood, New York. If you've never been there, it's a 212-acre oasis in the middle of Brentwood that is absolutely stunning. And during the entire summer, there's a number of organic farmers that grow plants and vegetables. And so there's a couple farmers markets right there on site, or a CSA if you want to join a CSA.
And lastly, Rusty, with the volunteering, does anyone need to contact somebody beforehand, or can we just show up?
Nope. You got to contact ahead of time, because we still have COVID protocols. We are limiting the number of people, especially now we're still in the greenhouse on a bunch of things. So we're really limiting the number of people. And so look on our Facebook page or our web page, and there's a way to volunteer. So thank you very much. That was a good catch, by the way.
I didn't want to have herds of people coming on Saturdays, but we'll repost that in the Northport Native Garden site. We'll post a link to Limpy for sure.
Yeah, very good.
Well, thank you, Rusty. Thank you so much for your time, for your wealth of information, and for being such a great resource to us here in Northport. We're really lucky to have you. If anybody else has any other questions, you can definitely email us. And if Matt, Sarah, and I don't have the answers for you, I'm sure I can text Rusty and just keep bothering him. So that's not a problem.